Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're back here with Lauri, Brenda's BFF, or at least one of them. And it's been a fascinating and incredible conversation in part one. So if you haven't seen the episode right before this one, please tune into that and watch it. So we're back with Lauri. Hi, Lauri. How are you
Hi,
doing? Thanks for
I'm
causing
great.
hable before.
Thanks. A
It's
little
still St.
drama.
Patrick's Day, but
Yeah, it
it's
was a
okay.
leprechaun. A leprechaun did it. That was the thing.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So when we left off, we were talking about how you were trying to get to Brenda as much as you could and really being there for Jay and the kids and being there to see all of Brenda's milestones. And then the pandemic hit. So they shut down the borders at that point. That's what I'm
Yes.
curious about.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they did. So I couldn't physically go visit, which I hated. I
Jeez.
really explored any and all ways of trying to do it, but it was what it was. But
Right.
obviously I was talking to Jay every day. I was trying to check the kids as much as they were interested. I was sending Isaac his dad joke of the day and
Oh, cute.
trying to FaceTime or chat with Brenda when she was up
Oh,
for it.
good.
And yeah, and then if continued to move forward and Brenda continued to move forward. I don't think I could ever admire anything or anyone as much as I admired Brenda and Jay, who would go out on walks. And then I know he would push her too far and then she'd come back and throw up and go out again. It was a little like boot camp, but
Which it was so funny when he talked about that because I'm like, you did what?
yeah,
And
he
then they would go
really,
back out. I'm like,
yeah.
oh my, he goes, I didn't know this wasn't the way to do it.
But Tracy, I have to say that it wasn't all Jay because my lovely friend Brenda
Right.
also has a lifetime of pushing herself and also she's the only person on the planet I know who likes doing burpees, that exercise where you jump up and squat
Oh
down
my
and
gosh,
put your
going
legs
to
out. And
oh
at
my
my
God.
40th birthday, we were at a place in New York City for my 40th birthday, and Brenda had very defined arm muscles from all of the workouts she'd been doing. She got down, I don't remember exactly how this happened, but she got down on the floor, on the dance floor, and did push-ups because
What?
someone dared her.
Oh, she
So
was buff.
yeah, so Jay also was pushing. Brenda is someone who's very determined, and as I think you know, but your audience may not know, in September Brenda does the Terry Fox run and does a 6 kilometer
10.
10, sorry,
10.
6
Yeah,
mile,
no,
10 kilometer,
it's like 6 miles, but 10
6 miles,
kilometers.
10
Yeah,
kilometer
yeah.
walk. And it's one of the things that I think is truly a testament to who she is, because yes, she'll have a dentist appointment and get in and out of the car and get back and then need to take a nap because her body is tired and her brain is tired. And this is a woman who does a 10K every year post her stroke. And I've been there for all but the first one because the border was still closed. And
Wow.
I remember there were times, Tracy, it was torrential downpour rain, and there
Oh,
were
I've
times when it
seen
was
the
windy,
pictures.
and I'm thinking I cannot for a second complain about anything. This woman who just had this traumatic brain injury is leading the charge on all of this, and
Unbelievable.
it's just, I think it's a wonderful metaphor for Brenda, for Jay, for their family,
Yeah.
for their relationship of you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and rain or
Yeah.
shine, you just keep moving forward. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to be part of it.
Yeah, I've seen your pictures from the walk. We've talked about it. And that's one thing I admire so much about Brenda is just her drive.
Yeah.
No matter what she's doing, the fact that she goes out in that hallway and walks for an
Yeah.
hour every day.
Yeah.
I'm not that disciplined. And I've talked to her about this
You
before.
can be disciplined, or you can say foolish, or you can say stubborn, but whatever you want to call it.
No, yeah, I just admire your drive and your strength.
Yeah.
That's how you are where you are now. You've
But
come
it's
so
also
far.
it's tied with Brenda's, I would say, ability to also set boundaries and say no. Right. I hope
Yes.
that's okay, Brenny, that I said it like that. But I think,
I'm
prior
okay.
to Brenda's oopsie, she had a hard time saying no and was always saying
Right.
yes and always doing a million things. And while she was making the chandelier for the senior ball dinner, she was also organizing the this or the that for the robotics team, and then making some cake
God.
with, she's always doing a million things. And while that was lovely, and I know she wanted to do those things, I think learning how to set healthier boundaries for herself to be able to
Mhm.
say, you know what, I'm going to take a nap now, or you know what,
Yeah.
I'm done with this, or I need to stop.
So,
I
so
can't talk to you. I've
try
got to keep
try
eating.
one of the very common phrases that Lori and I say to each other is, "Are you the pot or the kettle?"
Yeah, she's the same way. Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. But, you're almost forced to set boundaries
Yeah,
because, our body, like we talk, we have to prioritize where we're going to put that energy because
yeah,
the spoons, we only have a certain amount of spoons per day. So,
yeah.
yeah, I get that. And I
Well, she also used to
was
say,
forced to.
she don't even remember that. I don't know that if you remember this, Brenny, but Tracy, she used to say, a paper cut hurts to the person who has the paper cut, right? Like if you think about a paper cut, like what's the big deal? It's a paper cut. But
Right.
when you slice your finger on paper, it hurts.
It
And like again, if you
hurts
touch
big.
something that like, gets in there that's like, I don't know, salty or
Vinegar,
lemon
salt.
or whatever. Yeah, it hurts, right? And I think being able to understand that whatever it is any individual person is going through or needs or feels is real to them,
Yeah.
and to honor that and respect that you may not have the paper cut, but they do, and it's important to
Yeah.
acknowledge that.
No, I get that. Absolutely. So we have talked about this podcast and this community is not only for stroke, brain aneurysm, all ABIs, but for anyone going through an uphill battle or something traumatic that altered their life, in one way or another. And almost everybody I can think of can get something out of our weekly podcast. So
Yes.
I know that you went through something that was quite terrible. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. And I will say that in listening to your podcast, I mean, first and foremost, it brings me back to where I was and all the experiences I had with Brenda and her family. But there were definitely moments that it brought me back to my traumatic event and hospital stays and recovery and all of that. So you guys say anniversary, is that right?
Yes.
That's the term you
Yeah.
guys use. So her 8th, 1999. Oh, what is that, 26 years ago? Yeah, it'll be 27. I was driving down, I had been in Washington, D.C. I was driving down to Atlanta to visit a friend of mine. It was a beautiful, sunny day. I was driving a Nissan Pathfinder and I had had a car phone. This was like pre-cell phone,
Oh my
but I
gosh.
had
Yeah.
had a car phone, which was sort of bizarre. But
Crazy,
there it
right?
was. It was my brother's birthday. And I remember calling my brother and singing to his voicemail that, happy birthday. And I was about an hour and a half away from where my friend was in Atlanta, where I went to school. And I have no memory of. The front driver's side tire of my car blew. And the
Mm.
car flipped over, like rolled over, not head over,
Wow. Okay.
but rolled over from the left lane of the highway to the side, to like the where the grass was on the side of the highway,
Oh my
median,
gosh.
yeah, and the roof caved in, and my
Oh,
entire body was like slamming against the left. My left side of the body was slamming
oh
against the
my
car
gosh.
because that's rolled. That's where I was hitting.
Right.
I don't have any memory of that. There's a weird part of me that wishes I did because it feels like a missing piece.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I obviously know there's some reason that my body is protecting me from the pain or what I felt or what I
Yeah.
went through. I get that, but still, there's a
You
piece of me
still
that,
you want to fill
yeah, I want
in
to
the
know.
missing pieces.
I was 24. I had my 6-month-old puppy named Jake in the car with me.
Mm.
Jake was so the car came to a stop on the side of the road. Thank goodness, which was actually my parents told me the first question I asked them when they showed up at the ER hours later. Did I hurt anybody else in the accident? I was very worried that
Yeah.
I hurt not that it was I was in control.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
thankfully, no, it was just my car that was involved. But some really lovely, amazing people who saw this stopped. And this woman named Jane, who is from South Carolina, she saw this happen. She called 911. She stayed and talked to me while I was in the car and bloody and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. When the EMS came, she started collecting my stuff that had gotten
Oh
thrown out of
wow.
the car. I remember she picked up multiple pages of my like file of facts because that's how
Mm-hmm.
long ago this was. Again, no cell phones,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how she found my parents' address and phone number, and she called
Wow.
my parents. She actually helped coordinate with them for them to fly down, and she picked them up at the
Oh my
airport. Just
gosh.
like
What an
angel,
angel.
amazing woman. Yes, that
Yeah.
anyway, I could talk about her all day too. But she then saw there was a fleece baby blanket that I had put on the front seat of the car for my dog to sit on. And she saw the baby blanket. And this was around the time when poor Britney Spears had her baby in the car without a car seat. So I think she thought that, if you remember that back in
Yeah.
the 90s, I think Jane thought that there might have been a baby in the car because there was a
Yeah.
fleece baby blanket. So she was looking on the side of the road, collecting the stuff for potentially a baby. And she found my dog, Jake, who was in shock and not moving and not barking.
Oh,
And she picked up Jake and she brought him to an emergency animal shelter. I mean, just this is like,
wow.
there's so much bad in the world, right? But when you
Yes.
stop and really look at the good, the little and big things that people do,
Absolutely.
that's
Mhm.
tremendous, right? So she was amazing. She took my dog to the emergency vet. He broke his leg. He was in a cute little
Aw.
cast for a few
But
weeks,
he was
fine.
alive. At
He
first
was
I was like, oh my
alive. Yeah,
gosh.
no, thank God he was alive. And then she picked up my parents at the airport and brought them to the emergency room. Again, I have no memory of this. I broke 4 ribs. I punctured a lung. I tore my oblique muscle. I broke every bone in my arm,
Oh my
multiple
gosh.
fingers, tore skin off my hand. I was wearing a watch, tore skin off my
Oh
hand.
goodness.
And I had I broke my collarbone, which caused a brachial plexus injury. Brachial
Oh my
plexus is
God.
the nerve that goes from your brain into your neck, your shoulder, and down into your arm.
Yes.
And so, the first surgery was, by the way, the first question was, did I hurt anybody else in the accident? The second question was about my dog. I don't know that I actually asked about myself, according to my parents, but there we were.
You probably didn't.
I don't know. So I was then I had surgery. I was in ICU. And yeah, I mean, so they were able to repair the punctured lung and the other more bone things. I have plates and pins everywhere. But what they said was they weren't sure how much, if any, function I was going to have in my hand. And in fact, at the hospital I was in South Carolina, they weren't sure if they were going to be able to save my hand. They thought maybe they would have to amputate.
Wow.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so my wonderful parents, who were amazing advocates, made calls and talked to people they knew and found a phenomenal hand surgeon in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, who said, they sent all my stuff and whatever. And he said, I don't know how much function she's going to have, but we'll save her hand. So after 5 days and a couple surgeries in ICU, which I have vague memories of, I then went on a medevac airplane with my mom and obviously other people flying the plane. But I remember being terrified. I hated flying. I still hate flying. And my mom was like, after all you went through, this is not anything to worry about. But there I was,
Right.
anxious about the plane. So I went to this other hospital. And to fast forward, I was in that hospital for about a month. I had between ICU and that hospital stay, I had about 8 different surgeries. I had another 4 in the next 2 years after that. It was definitely something where they were trying to address the most immediate things first and quickly, but it sort of snowballed into other things that maybe lingered longer than they should have, like my torn oblique muscle, which then got worse, which then became a hernia in addition to the torn
Oh,
oblique muscle.
geez.
So 2 years after the accident, when I had that surgery, they had to put in a mesh graft and do all this other stuff.
Mhm.
So it didn't quite end, right? Like
Right.
the accident or the oopsie is the moment, but it's all of that stuff afterwards, right? And I
Yeah.
had tremendous guilt of what I put my family through and my friends
Yeah.
through. I had my mom and dad. We were in a hospital in Philly, and my parents were from Long Island. They wanted to be with me in the hospital. My amazing brother, who was at Cornell University, came home from college to be with our sister, she was 14 at the time. And so it just felt like I had put all of this emotionally and literally,
Mhm.
logistically on all of these people. And I felt terrible because also in my mind, I was like, I'm going to just keep doing what I need to do to get through this. And you guys have talked about this a little bit. It's like you have there's the reality of kind of what you're going through and experiencing and feeling medically. and what other people are reacting to you. But I always felt like, but I'm going to just keep going. Like there was no,
Right.
if it doesn't go right, there was no
Yeah.
of course I lived through the accident. Of course I was going to get better. I
Yeah,
didn't know how,
that's how I was.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there is an alternative, but the alternative just brings you backwards. So
Okay,
as much,
I just want to interrupt you because when you were talking about what you did to your family, I just want to, because the other thing we also do is like, if it was me saying it, what would you say? So what I
Yeah.
said to you,
I know.
and I feel so guilty about what I put them all through,
Yeah.
you wouldn't let me do that. But yet here
Yes.
you are doing it. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
I do it often too. We've
Yeah.
talked about this
Yeah.
many times.
Well, and I think maybe we need to give ourselves a little bit more grace too, right? And
Mhm.
obviously none of us would have chosen this, and none of our family and friends would have chosen this.
Of course.
So at 24 years old, when I finally got out of the hospital, I had to sleep on a rented hospital bed in my parents' den after I had obviously moved out a couple years before, for college and then graduate school,
Mhm.
because I couldn't shower myself. I had this big contraption on my arm to hold everything
Oh,
together.
goodness.
I was still having surgeries to do tendon transfers at first. And Tracy, I related to when you were talking about this. When I first had the accident, the only thing I could do with this is my good hand, but the only thing I could do is move my fingers up, like lift my fingers
Mhm.
up. I couldn't bend them at all. And so that's not really functional. I could flick things, but
Yeah,
that's not going to
that's how
really
my hand
get me
is
much.
now.
So this amazing surgeon was able to figure out how to do a tendon transfer from one place in my arm to my 4 fingers in my left arm, in my left hand, to get some movement back. So then now all of my fingers, my 4 fingers move together. I'm demonstrating for those of you who are listening, not
Yeah.
watching. And my thumb was another tendon transfer. So I can, depending on the size of things, I can hold things.
Oh, see, that's so useful.
I can be more functional with it. But now it's 26 and a half years later and I've adapted, but that was really hard too. And at one
Right.
point, here's a funny moment with my mom and I turned to my mom and I was, having all the feels, which again, allow yourself the grace to feel all the, like,
Right.
I was determined to get back in the car. People were asking me, like, are you ever going to drive again? I'm like, what do you mean? I'll drive out of here right now.
Yeah.
Like, what are you
Do what
talking
I
about?
gotta do.
Yeah. And on the other hand, it was hard. And I remember feeling really angry and really frustrated and really just down and depressed. And
Yeah.
why did this happen? And how do I get better? And
Mhm.
you have all the feelings. But at one point when I wasn't sure what kind of use I'd get out of my hand, I turned to my mom and I said to her, I don't know why these are the 2 examples I came up with. I said, Mom, like, what if I can never use my hand again and I can't ever learn sign language or play the piano? And my mom's like, do you want to learn sign language? Like, you've never mentioned sign language. And I'm like, I don't know, but what about the piano? And she's like, Lauri, when we forced you to take piano lessons as a kid, you hated it and never wanted to play piano. Why would you
Now
now
you
want to
wanna
play
pick it
piano?
up.
So,
Choice. You want the choice to be able to.
yes,
Right.
clearly that was
And
what it was about.
Yeah.
Those were the things. Fast forward, I
Sorry.
remember the night, it was probably a few months after my car accident when I was able to finally function enough on my own that I could go back to my little studio apartment in the West Village in New York City and
Oh, wow.
spend the night on my own. And at 25, at that point, that was really hard too, right? To be so dependent
Mhm.
and then try to regain that. And it was hard. I mean, I remember having like a love-hate relationship with all the tools that, the OTPT people were giving me, like, oh,
Mhm.
well, if you instead of having to use a fork and a knife, because at the time I couldn't, here's like a rocker knife and a this and a that. And I was
Yeah.
like, I
Not
had real
doing
mixed
that.
feelings.
Yep.
I did. I had real mixed feelings about some of those tools. I went to physical therapy and occupational therapy for 6 years after the accident. I was able to get up and walk around. I started going back to the gym. I started doing dance classes again. I started to move. And the biggest, I think, visible thing was the scar that I have on my hand still from the skin graft that they did.
Mhm.
And I wore a compression glove over my hand for years. Didn't have to.
Wow.
There was no reason I needed to, but I was embarrassed
Right.
about my scars. And, just all of those things that you see in yourself shifting
Mhm.
and trying to regain who you are in this new
Yes.
reality. And I had for years, Brenda knows this, Tracy, I had for years these nightmares. I literally would have nightmares that I was at my future wedding. Didn't obviously know to who at that point. And, they said like it was time for my groom to put the ring on my finger. And I, in my nightmare, lifted my hand and the entire crowd list like gasped in horror at my hand.
God.
And I had this dream repeatedly, and I had anxiety about my hand and my future wedding and,
Yeah.
just all of those things that you perceive about yourself. I also
Mhm.
was told that I was going to have nerve pain in my hand and arm for 3 to 5 years post-accident.
Oh my gosh.
I will tell you this past weekend, I was in like really awful pain. So it's been 25 and a half years and I
See?
still have nerve pain. That's not as bad. And I've, done some things over the years with obviously medical supervision to try to lessen it, but
Mhm.
it lingers and it's a constant reminder. I mean, I have gotten over wearing the glove. I don't always have the pain, but it's a constant.
Yeah. It's a lifelong process.
Yeah. I mean, even putting on this is so silly. We're back to breasts. I don't know why we're always talking about
Okay, the
breasts with
bra.
me, but
Tell me the
the
bra.
bra, right? Like I always
can't put
I
one
reached
on now.
around. So I
Yeah.
always reached around to put it on the back and I couldn't, not only because I lost some range of motion in my left shoulder, but I couldn't grip. I don't have strong enough grip for something
Yeah.
that thin. So I had to put
Yeah.
it on in the front and spin, I could do it in the
Yeah,
front
that's how I do it.
and spin it around. But I remember like now there's moments that it's like, oh, whatever, it's fine. It's just the way I do it. And there's moments when it's like, gosh, why can't I just put on a
Right.
bra
Reach
the way
back.
everybody else puts on a bra, right?
Mhm. Right. So much
Interestingly,
of what you're saying is so
resonates.
relatable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I was going to say that the last picture I have of myself before this car accident, which was November 8th, 1999, was October 1999 at Brenda and Jay's wedding.
Mm.
And that was the last picture I have pre-accident.
The accident. Yeah.
So it's all sorts of, I don't know, crazy
And it's the
connections and
same,
things
the
like that. But
before and the after. Everything is before that event
yeah,
and after.
That's right.
And that's your reality now.
That's right.
yeah,
So when we talk about ourselves and stories, well, before the aneurysm, I had gone to Vegas, and then
yeah,
post aneurysm rupture, I can't imagine going to Vegas right now. Like,
yeah.
and it's
I
been
mean,
22 years for me.
yeah.
Like,
But I think you just, but Tracy, you also strike me as a person who keeps going, right? Even if you can't keep going at the
Yeah.
same pace, right? You keep
Right.
going, you keep moving forward, you keep saying, okay, well, you acknowledge the moments that really suck and you're really upset and angry and all of those things, and you move forward and you find new ways of doing and being, and I think you have
going.
to, yeah, and you
Yeah.
have to be grateful, right? So I'm 5'2".
Oh, yeah.
I always hated being short, and one of the things that they said was because as my car rolled over,
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
We're dealing with technical difficulties, so we lost Lauri again. And so rather than her being able to give a tip of the day about her own experience, we're going to kind of wrap this up. And
Yeah.
hopefully she'll get back on. So, Trey, do you have a tip of the day based on what Lauri shared?
Oh my gosh. What she went through, I just can't imagine. And it just goes to show everything she was describing, I felt. And, it just proves that our podcast just goes so far as who would get something out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Right. And I can't wait to have her on again. We'll have her on again. I'm really happy that she was able to be there for you and your family when you were going through your stroke and the aftermath, I'll say. Those friendships are just invaluable. Like, I have friends like that and I can't even imagine life without them. So I'm happy that she was there for you and your family. But my tip of the day, just everything's relatable. Everybody has something in their life that the before and the after, the event that changed their life forever. So, take it in stride and try to stay optimistic. And like today, just keep going, like it's just a day, right?
That's right.
But
I
yeah,
would-
that's my tip.
I would say, to piggyback on your tip, I would say, because everyone does have a before and after of something. So be kind. because if you think that someone's being a pain in the ass, there might be a really good reason that they're struggling with something. So be kind, be patient, maybe even ask them, are you okay? Is there something going on? Can I help you?
Yeah, because they're not acting like they usually are.
That's right.
Yeah. No, that's a great tip. So with that, we'll wrap this up for today and we'll have Lauri on another day and we'll finish up our conversation.
Sounds good.
All
Okay.
right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for
Okay.
listening.
So, first of all, to all future podcast guests on Beating the Odds, there's no way that your internet is going to go out so dramatically and annoyingly the way mine did multiple times during our recording. So you're going to be just fine. To Brenda and Tracy, you amazing, lovely, strong, fantastic ladies, I am so sorry that my internet disrupted your wonderful podcast. I guess just before I lost the thought, I wanted to share that, trauma is trauma, and whatever it may look like for you, there's a piece of it that you carry with you. And I think finding the strength to look at that and, sort of like that saying, you have to go through it to get past it, and allow yourself to feel all the feels, the pain, the anger, the frustration, the sadness, the disappointment, and then pick yourself up and say, what do I want for myself, and how do I move forward for myself? And you can envision healing, and you can envision getting better, and you can envision strength, and you can envision moving forward and just taking the step. And even if the step looks different than it did before, take the step. There is science to say that if you train your brain to see positivity and see the good, your brain will start to see more positivity and good. And if every day you either end the day or begin the day by saying, what are positive things that happened to me today? Or what are things that were good that happened today? Or what am I going to look for that's going to be positive and good today? It'll train your brain to start looking for it. It's kind of like if you hear a song on the radio, you all of a sudden notice that song, in the grocery store and at Target and on the radio in someone else's car later on. So if you train your brain, if you pay attention to the good and the positive, it will help you move forward, and you can move forward. And I am